There we go. So yeah, this project one is pretty fun to get into because it is using Photoshop as visual. It's a pretty social project because of those things. And just a reminder, check the schedule. There's a couple things updated. Like tonight, you'll want to watch one of these videos and do the response, right? Those have been up since Wednesday night, so should be good on that. And if you end up being late on it, it's minimal points off. It doesn't really matter, so you can still catch up with it. Like Saturday if you don't have time today. So anyhow, yeah, if you did miss any classes, if there might be somebody straggler who didn't come to the whole first week, you could head on to the website, go through the class schedule, and check out the lectures. The top left of the lecture, and this is just maybe a refresher in case anybody didn't get it. All of the lectures on Keynote, they do have this little icon at the top left that you can click and show presenter notes. So if you missed class, you can go through and see what you missed, There is also a link I put on our UB box for like old YouTube recordings. I didn't put it on our website here too often because it's a little old. If I feel any, if I have something that's more pertinent, that's new, I feel like I'll just do a new video like this. So, but that stuff is there if you want to go through, previous student examples and so forth, hearing what people want to talk about. Anyhow, let's kind of look over the proposal thing here. And this will be in conjunction with the project one page itself. Because ideally you do want to check that out before you just go ahead and blurb something in here. Make sure you're getting a pretty good idea. So this statement should deliver a cohesive yet concise overview of your theme. Rather than going into detail about how your project might end up looking, focus on detailing the underlying structure of your concept. Once completed, next week, you will link us from this proposal to your visuals using sketches, right? So that's a thing to keep in mind, that if you want to get ahead, you don't have time at the beginning of the week, look at your schedule. We will be going over sketches on Wednesday of this coming week. So if you want to get ahead and do your proposal early, get that in, and then start looking at sketches. They do take a little bit, I find. The first time you might do sketches, if you're not somebody who doodles often, they don't have to be super clear. I'll give you the reference for the example, I suppose, but I'll be going over them in class on Monday, but I can go over here too. So anyhow, additionally, you should form a final image that does not look like it was cut pasted. The phrase I use in class is like, you don't want it to look like you just cut out pieces from magazines and pasted it on there, right? So we'll be going over the exercise on Monday. So make sure you're just kind of up and ready to go on Monday. We'll dive right in. The sooner we get going, we'll have more time for playing around in Photoshop, questions and so forth. So the big deal with this proposal, and I find that by commenting on this aspect, a lot of people don't run into it. Less people have the problem, but if you do take the time now to set something you enjoy and it answers these 3 questions, you're good to go. You don't have to go back and say after next week, Wednesday, we take a look at everybody's stuff and you decide, oh, well, mine's not good enough. Every concept is worthy of doing a project. So alternatively, some people also feel like they don't know what they should do. Again, don't be thinking about the visuals, just be thinking about answering these questions, right? What is the theme and theory, and how might you source the content? And really, by sourcing content, I want you to think about, like, is there anything relative to the theme and theory you're talking about? Like, could you gather content from said area? This is a research institution, so maybe there's different resources for you, So always something to think about. So if we head back over to the Project One page and take a look at these different examples, you'll see that none of them are really cut pasted. And this is really not a full project. This is just this example, more so just an example of patterns in that you guys can easily do this. We'll kind of go over that. This example is a pretty interesting visual of like using old content or even potentially new content and making it look old, but it's kind of a waste of time in a sense, right? You guys really don't need to like reinvent anything here. We're kind of like stealing content and meshing it together, and then throwing filters and stuff on it as well. Like this, throw a color filter on it. We don't need to like rebuild an image to make it look old or so forth. So you guys can look through those. And anything with blue, I felt like might be something you guys aren't familiar with yet. So you can go through and take a look at how that is in context to the rest of the project here. Sometimes I just try to link Wikipedia pages. What's nice about those is as you're reading, you might come across another term that's supposed to be part of the definition. You're like, well, I don't know what that is either. So you can kind of, keep up with your scholarly learning, researching. So yeah, there's a really whole rich structuring, history behind photo montage and going back in time. And that's something that if you have the interest in, explore it, why can't you mimic an old style collage, right? I will say that we do have a scanner in the class. So if you guys want to rummage through like old documents you might have, like your grandparents' house or flea markets, you can go to the library, ask reference librarians for old stuff, right? Let them know what you're looking for. And it's a lot of cool stuff to kind of work through like this. So yesterday I was linking a lot of documents, pages for you guys for resources. And I came across, different museums and stuff even have access to archives. So if you get into working with old mediums here, maybe it's content that's really more so art and design, but maybe the content's for something like video games, right? And go through that kind of research. So anyhow, kind of giving you guys all the different realms that you might be thinking through. All of them are worthy of exploring, So yeah, you're just generating this one image by the end of this few weeks of working on it. And you want to just have it be set to a theme and have some sort of theory that you're applying to it, that you're working on over this time, right? So the central topic, right? Some sort of narrative structure, and the theory could be driving this narrative, right? So that's really for you guys to set up. And also, I challenge you guys in class too, when you're looking at each other's. One of the things we're going to be going over is, do the other people have their theme down? Can they relate it to you well? Does it make sense? Can they relate some sort of theory to you down? You know, is that set? Does that make sense? And then through that, hopefully everybody can give alternative thoughts, you know, share links or whatever. So you know, don't kind of just do something too quick. So you want to have some sort of ability to relate it to other people. So a final statement will ultimately come once you have finished the project. You're going to be able to go back and like, okay, what did I learn? What, you know, is there anything like Bernard was telling me about through the class? Or, you know, maybe there's an aspect didn't really think about, we didn't talk about with groups, but then you showed somebody else as you're working on it, you know, a friend or something, and they're like, oh, dude, you know, you totally should look at this. So that's really how I want you guys to be thinking about this class and the content. You don't want to be thinking about it as like a vacuum, you know, it's a social medium. So you guys have that ability, like, hey, check out what I'm doing. And if you are kind of in the arts already, or you're striving to kind of ongoingly produce media, I would suggest trying to think through ways in which you can continue that output, right? Like, how can you make little things and continually spit them off? One approach is like doing Instagram challenges or something, you know, every week you post something or whatever. So anyway, kind of this thought process of getting other insight. So by the time we get to that final statement, you know, we could talk a little more about trying to be more formalized, but according to sort of like the convention of talking about art. And I do have a resource I guess I could share for that as well, giving some background context for anybody interested. So yeah, as you go along, you want to be collecting content. So, you know, if you go out and do some random Google search, like, you know, I want to do a project on smelly tacos. Like, what the hell is that? You know, and you get stupid concepts, or, you know, add on like another term here, and where does that go? And, you know, so just kind of Googling through, finding different things will help. The one thing to keep in mind for this visual project is you want to most likely stick away from this graphical approach. You know, solid colors, look more cartoony. This is considered vector art, which is Illustrator. We're going to be playing around with that later in the semester. So really just be thinking about photos, you know. Could you use photos on your own, you know, on your own device that you already have? Can you find relative content and take interesting photos of it? So that's really try to get in the mindset of now, so that as you're just going about your day, you might come across a process or some kind of imagery that you could document and keep. So yeah, there's some sketch examples. This is, the rest here is more likely onward after we start working. So, you know, as you go out and think about what you would like to research, I might suggest, instead of just like, oh, what am I interested in? Do that. You could do like like a mind map or brainstorm. Yeah. And write down things, put it in your sketchbook if you want. Anything related to the class that you're putting on paper, put it in the sketchbook. You can include that with your sketchbook submissions. It's totally relevant. But yeah, like if you guys are media people, you know, not only could you be thinking about something about your interest, but could it be relative towards something within this area of practice, you know? So you could be doing these different term searches, like what is media theory, you know? And kind of go through and just get general definitions of different things you might be interested in, because that will ultimately be bringing you to new terms that you wouldn't have thought about using for a project. So like internet forums, that could be a whole project, you know? Feminist theories of composition, you know? I need to make an account. Okay. And then the other thing too, you know, I don't know how relevant we can, if there's a lot of interest, maybe I can bring in some other resources, but you guys keep in mind that you do have access to all of UB's library system, especially since we are this research school. If you're going to continue within like this university structure of academics where maybe you want to get a PhD someday, you know, you have to have, it has to be research heavy. I'm not that heavy. So if you head over to the library, you can search for whatever you want, you know, like feminism in media, you know, what does that kick back? And there's general, if you're doing actual like library search results, I mean, you could look for books if you wanted to, but oftentimes when I'm doing stuff, I want to be a little quick. So I sometimes might suggest like making sure it's online, you know, articles, reviews. You kind of keep it relative to like what might be helpful. You could even list books because sometimes books are online. And then publication date. When I was in grad school, I think it was grad school, maybe undergrad, like 10 years or newer is kind of what you want to aim for. So, so 2013, you could even do like 20. What if you want to do like pandemic era onward, you know? That could be something relevant too. So, date search is definitely helpful. And then I think that should be all we need. As long as we have access, apply these filters. And you know, you just like this is still a ton of filters. So how could we how could we limit it down more than that, right? But this is getting into research and or research practices, I should say. So maybe not super pointed, but it's definitely something to keep in mind, because as you continue on, especially like your senior year, you're going to need to have some other references like these. So maybe you already have something, right? But if anybody's interested, give me a shout in class. Like if you want more insight in how to do this kind of research stuff. Everybody says, oh, it's a research school. Is there training in other classes? I'm not familiar with the DMS structure for undergrads in that way. So on top of those, more scholarly research types of thinking through theory and ideas, you could also check out other visual concepts. But a lot of times that's what they're going to be. They're going to be visual. They're not going to be based on concepts. So if you're kind of stuck trying to develop that concept, your proposal, that's going to be theme and theory, right? What's going to spark that interest to get to that point? If you guys aren't familiar, I put even on here now this semester, I would advise checking out Grammarly. On the Mac, I have tried the web browser extension. There is an option for that. It didn't work for me. It kept being really glitchy. And I ultimately did subscribe to Grammarly, and it was still glitchy, that web version. So I would just try the desktop app. That works fine for web anyway. And Microsoft Word and text edit and email. So, if you want to be more professional. And then also what really sold me is it does have support for phones. So I think there's a free option for phones as well. Don't quote me, but where you can toggle that on. So if you're writing an email and you want to, like, oh, there's a bunch here. Maybe I wrote something weird, and as you get these examples of how you might be writing weirdly or oddly, or could be more concise or whatever, professional. So the proposal is not a huge deal for this, but if you get it sooner than later, you start using it. I think it's just beneficial overall. So definitely advise checking that out. And then the other thing was about the sketching. So this is on the project page as well. Sketch examples. I think these might be, yeah, they are under the student resources, under past student work examples, and then sketches. And I actually put in the notes here what my recommendations are for that. So if you pop it open without going full screen, you can actually see the whole thing at the top. These are old, it's not really meant to call people out or anything. It's to show you guys like what can be bad approaches and good approaches, because the whole reason you should be doing these is to be able to learn how to adequately deliver an idea to other people. This could be delivering an idea, but it kind of looks like they were, clambering in a cave or something. It's very, very, sketch heavy with the marker. You just want to be a little bit more deliberate, like this is fine, but is this 3 sketches or 1, so you can go through and get a preview of, based on my notes, what might be helpful and so forth. And I'll cover this in class too. So that's one of the big things I advocate for, is spending your own time working on the class. Just don't, oh, we have to watch a video and then write a response, right? Okay. And a video's decently length, so that's probably enough time to spend in the class. Uh, but in terms of like then Sunday for another day's worth of class for the week, a proposal, how long does that really take? Think about that as you're doing it. And then think back to this. There is a rule of thumb that universities have, and it says like every hour that you're in class, you should spend 2 hours outside of class. And if you kind of add that up, each week we're in class 200 minutes roughly, right? So out of class, you should be spending 400 minutes. And obviously, that's a challenge if you are also working, or if you have too many course credits. That's why we recommend only taking a couple, and really to be not just like an A student, or um, kind of achieving all the learning outcomes, but are you showing that promise toward ongoing study? And that's really where spending the extra time each week is going to um, put you ahead for that area as well. And I don't want to make this too long, but the other thing to keep in mind as we go through the semester, and I did mention this, but thinking about your portfolio and what types of work do you want to be able to convey in your portfolio. But what also kind of goes on from there is not just what kind of work, but can you successfully employ strategies that future employers will like to see, such as being able to overcome challenges, right? Maybe that's part of your concept. Like last semester, we did a section on diversity and inclusion. So while that's not going to be required here, it'll be required later in the term. That kind of thing, embedding these sorts of questions that are more societally, socially pointed, and kind of gives people a deeper look into your mind, that you're actually spending the time and going out and looking at these things and asking questions. And so the more specific I guess you can be with your proposals, the better. But not a ton of stress. You just want to be thinking as the semester progresses, are you improving, right? And I'll try to give notes this first proposal, if I can, and then you guys can take that feedback working towards the next one. And hopefully by that point you'll have like a full points. And if you still kind of like lacking in that way, and you're like, man, I wonder what I'm lacking in, how could I fix that? I'm here, you guys got to come to me. So there's just a whole lot of different things for the class that you can put time into that will help your future. It's just we're limited in class, and I'm not going to be making these sorts of videos every week for supplemental. This is really just to kind of get us up to par. And this video itself is optional. So those of you who are sticking through are probably more along the lines of those A student mentalities anyway, So